All right, it's Friday morning. I'm just leaving CrossFit here. I saw an interesting question on Reddit I figured we'd try out. I'm just going to get the windows clear a little bit because it's raining and everything in the car is foggy. I'll try to back out of this spot. It's really difficult to see anything at these parking spots. Okay, so the question on Reddit, it's a little philosophical. I got to clear this windshield too, my God. But I think it's an interesting one and probably something that people need to try. I don't know, I think it's important to answer this for yourself and your career. And the idea of the question is as a software engineer, and you could probably apply this to any industry, right? But in your career, what motivates you to keep being better? And I think it's an interesting question, especially considering past few videos that I put out on Commute have been around when you're looking for different jobs, how are you evaluating companies or, work-life balance. Oh man, I gotta get gas. We'll make it home, it's okay. You know what, I'm gonna get gas before I get on the highway. So I'm gonna have to edit this one. Good thing I saw that. Anyway, this idea I think we really have to keep coming back to in our careers because it will change. But I think you can use it sort of as almost like a north. This is maybe a phrase most people haven't heard. I don't know, like a North Star to kind of guide you in the decisions that you're making for yourself. So I think some people haven't done this exercise before, and it's I know I wanted to get into software engineering because there's good money. Okay, and already you kind of have one thing that you value, and that's money. And I said this in the last video I recorded, but there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money. I think even for myself, in my upbringing, it's kind of almost like a frowned upon thing. Hey, it's not all about money. And just because there's a motivation including money does not imply that everything is 100% money, just for the record. But trying to act like it's not important, I think, is also kind of misleading and perhaps negligent. So that's one example of just, even if you're not aware of the things that you're valuing, consciously, I mean, I gave you one example already where probably for most people getting into it, maybe money was a motivating factor. So I do think it's important that we start to try and dive into this. So before I pull into the gas station here, I'll share, just as a heads up, I'll be sharing kind of things that I have looked at in my career, and maybe some things going forward that I don't know if I can anticipate, but I'll provide some thoughts on that. So give me 1 sec as I pull into the gas station. I actually had a flat tire here a couple months ago. If you were watching my videos and you saw when I had to go get the loaner vehicle, not the last time, but one of the times before, it's because I had a flat tire and I had to pull into this gas station and wait for 2 hours for AAA. Anyway, I'll be right back. Okay, let's make sure we never come back to this gas station because that took me 10 minutes to fill up a gas tank. I can't comprehend how it was that slow. Now we gotta pull out of here and we'll get back to the highway. Okay, so before I continue on, just a reminder that if you want questions answered, leave them in the comments. And if you want to write something with a little bit more detail, just look for Dev Leader on social media. Send me a message. I'll keep it completely anonymous. Happy to answer what you got going on in your software engineering career. But let's kind of dive into some thoughts around this. And if I go way back for myself, kind of the framing I was saying, for people that maybe are getting into, for me, it was, I think most people were college or universities, the path for software engineering. I know there's a lot more boot camps and stuff now. Not they didn't exist before, but I just feel it's kind of been a big paradigm shift over the past 10 to 20 years kind of thing. But for me, it was like, okay, I remember being in elementary school, high school, kind of being told like, oh, you're a smart kid, like you should consider being an engineer. And I've told this story a couple times, I guess. It's not really a story, but like when I was little, I thought every time someone told me I should be an engineer, they meant like a train engineer, like a conductor. And I was like, that's really weird that people keep telling me that. Like it seems very specific. But okay. And I didn't know, like, I didn't understand what engineering was, right? Like as a profession. So that was like a weird thing that I had to uncover over time. Obviously, by the time I was ready to go to school, I had kind of figured this out. But so engineering was kind of constantly put in front of me. It was like, hey, you seem to be a smart kid. You should consider that. I got to get out of this lane because people are going so dangerously slow in this lane and hammering the brakes that like someone's going to get in an accident. I don't know if people realize this, but there's like, obviously if you're flying down the highway and going super fast, that's dangerous, but driving like very, very slow on a highway is also dangerous. You might feel like, oh, like safe for me, but you're gonna have people that are like tailgating you, trying to pass you. Like you're creating a dangerous situation for others. If the road is not clear, different story, but like it's just raining, it's okay. No real good excuse right now for that kind of behavior. So I was kind of like pushed in this direction because I didn't really know, but I knew that I liked working with computers ever since I was a kid. I had learned how to program in like grade 9. So I had, my grade 9 through 12 was kind of like discovering programming, and that was a lot of fun. But I didn't really know exactly like what I wanted to do when I grew up. So when it came time to go figure out like what do I want to do for my career, if I'm going to be going to college or university, it was like, I remember thinking, okay, I like programming and I could go into like software development. I still don't really fully understand what that's going to mean when I'm all grown up. But I remember my father was kind of recommending, he's like, hey, like, anyone can, I don't know, he didn't say it exactly like this, but it kind of felt like the message was like, anyone can be a programmer, but like the money isn't hardware. So like it's a better investment for your future if you get into hardware. And me like being kind of naive about this, like I didn't really consider this is just his bias, right? Like he had, when I was a lot younger, he had a hardware company that was like making circuit boards. So this is like, that's what he thought, right? So I said, okay, like I'll go into computer engineering and I can get that exposure. That way, and again, back to the motivation, that way I'll be set up to have a good career. And by my definition, that was like, you're gonna make money, right? At least I know I'm interested in computers. Like that was important. It had to be something I was interested in. And on top of that, you'll make money. So that was my starting point. Now I've talked about this before too, but when I was in university and I had 6 internships because it was like a co-op program at the University of Waterloo. If I were to think during that time, what was motivating for me, it certainly wasn't to work hard, if that makes sense. It sounds kind of funny, and it's like kind of embarrassing for me to say at this point because my sort of outlook is much different, but maybe this was like a good thing, I don't know, but like I wasn't interested in working hard. So it was like, do good work, but like I'm gonna do the good work for the time I'm supposed to, and then sort of the least amount of good work I have to do to do good work, that's what I'm getting done. And part of me, like I'm laughing at this because part of me is thinking like, okay, that's probably like air quotes, like working smart, right? Like not just doing extra work because it's extra. And part of me is laughing because a lot of my career beyond that point was quite the opposite, which was like doing extra work, right? So in terms of what motivated me, though, it's a good question. I think for me at that time, I was just motivated to get out of school. And it's kind of a shame because I feel like during my time at school, I didn't feel motivated to get better, if that makes sense. Or else I would have been taking advantage of a lot of the things that the school was offering, different like programs in terms of like clubs or things like extracurricular things. The fact that I'm at a university, like one of the top engineering schools in Canada, surrounded by other, software developers, engineers and stuff, like, why did I not take advantage of that situation more? So it's mild regret, I guess, but it kind of feels like silly that, there was that opportunity to lean into that more. And truthfully, my motivation was not aligned with that. It was just, how do I get done here? But I enjoyed my internships, right? Like that to me was motivating. And I think what I was realizing, like money aside, right? Because I mentioned that's kind of one of the driving factors for getting into it. Money aside, I realized I was really enjoying it, which might sound funny to some people, I don't know, but like I actually just enjoy writing code. We got to switch lanes again because we got another person that's going way below the speed limit. So yeah, like I had on the internships, I was getting exposed to things and I was like, this is actually like really fun. But the thing is, like, clearly not fun enough compared to other things that I wanted to do as more of a kid, right? I don't know when I can call myself a kid, up to like what age, but I want to play video games. I want to go hang out with my friends, like even in my, I don't know, like early 20s and stuff. So like, let me go do that. Like programming's fun, yes, but like if I'm going to program for fun, it's going to be my stuff. And then I want to hang out with my friends or play video games. So it was at least enough where I was like, hey, I definitely know I want to be doing this when I'm done school, because like I do enjoy it. Now, an interesting thing when you start getting your first jobs and stuff, or maybe this happens for other people, depending on the type of side projects and things they're doing, but you start getting exposed to different domains, right? Because software engineering is one of these fields that you can pick any domain that you can think of and probably write software for it, right? You could take gardening, like, okay, like how do you go program microcontrollers to go read different, environmental things for your gardens, like inventorying for places that are selling flowers. Like you pick any industry and there's probably software that you can build for it. So for me, at least, my internships were this first sort of exposure to like, hey, like you actually could be going to work in all sorts of different places. So I had an internship that was making bank machine software, like the ATMs that you go to withdraw and deposit money. I worked at a startup that did it was a contractor, but we had a contract for doing basically like animal immunization. So we were doing embedded development for helping administer medicine to animals. There was an internship for doing like operating room audio video setups, which is like super cool. So the point I'm trying to get at here is like, for me, that was my first exposure to like, maybe there's a domain that I'm very passionate about and don't even realize it yet, which is going to be a nice segue into my first like full-time role as a software developer, which is at a company called Magnet Forensics. That's where I was for 8 years before Microsoft. And I think this is where there was, for me, like a lot of sort of like fundamental formation of things that I value over that 8-year period. But one thing, just to finish the segue, one thing that I realized was like being able to work in digital forensics meant that we had this opportunity to help with with saving kids, right? And we created software for like law enforcement, for examiners, investigators, and a lot of the times, as unfortunate as it is, our software was being used to help basically catch pedophiles. And it's not something that people talk about a lot because it's like a pretty taboo topic, and obviously it's triggering. But the reality is, like, this kind of stuff happens a lot, and it's like super dark and super, like I said, super unfortunate. But so it's not something I ever, like, kind of growing up was like, hey, I can't wait to help with that, because I just like didn't really think that it existed, at least to the degree that it does. Sorry, I got to turn right here, but this intersection is kind of funky. So I learned for myself, like, that being able to help with that and have an impact that way was like one of the most motivating things that I feel like when I'm on my deathbed, I will still say that's probably something that was able to top anything else in my life, which is huge, right? Like, that was kind of the first job I had, being able to help in that way. First full-time job, sorry, where I was realizing that, like, we can have such an impact on other parts of the world. So that was really interesting to find something that was, pardon me, like, that motivating, that just like you can have such a big impact. But the other thing I realized in the teams that I was running is, like, something that motivates me is, and this, again, it's not for everyone, but I really liked being the underdog. And it's kind of funny because I'm at Microsoft now. Microsoft is not the underdog of things. Maybe Edge browser is the underdog of browsers. But, like, Microsoft's not an underdog, right? It's a behemoth. It's huge. Tons of industries. It's monstrous. But what was really cool where I was working before was that I managed very small teams. Before I left, I was managing 2 teams that were probably 5 or 6 people each. And what was super cool was that it was like, we're underdogs, right? We have these ridiculous constraints on us because we're so small and our goals are so big, and there's other people doing this stuff, and it was like, but we're going to do it better. And that was like, again, I didn't realize this about myself, but that was really motivating for me. So now, like, these days at Microsoft, and kind of at the tail end of my career at Magnet Forensics, I talk about I was a manager for basically the entire 8 years that I was at Magnet Forensics. I started managing very early there, very early in my professional career, which is kind of unusual, just because of a startup kind of setup. But I was also an IC at the same time. Like, I was programming and managing for my tenure there. And at the end of that, I started to realize, like, I like having a bigger impact by being more hands-off. It took me a long time to realize that. So in terms of motivators now, I am very motivated by being able to have more broad impact by managing and helping coordinate teams. So if I can empower my teams to do more effective work, like, to me, that's really rewarding now. But it took a long time to kind of feel that kind of reward moving through software engineering, right? Because for a long time, like, being like as someone who's I feel confident I can say that I'm a strong coder, being able to lean on that and being like, that's the thing that's going to carry me, and having to move away from that and saying, no, like, what's going to carry me is being a good leader, and that's going to be more rewarding. It just took a long time to figure out. So I think kind of going forward for me, though, if I compare my career trajectory prior to Microsoft to currently, and this is kind of like a personal note for myself, right? Like my career trajectory now to be able to have a broader impact on organizations, I'm extremely far behind where I was headed. Microsoft is huge, don't get me wrong. The space I work in is like planetary scale, so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact from like an organizational perspective and the impact that I'm able to have within an organization. I'm many years behind now where I would have been. And that's not a knock on Microsoft or anything like that. It's more like, okay, for me, if the thing that motivates me to do better in my career is going to be having more broad impact across an organization, I was basically getting prepared to move into a director position that they were creating. Because our org before Microsoft, I mean, we didn't have a career path for technical manager into directorship. So they're trying to create that. And if you fast forward 5 years, I'm still like a mid-level manager at Microsoft, which means like my direct reports are individual contributors. I'm not a manager of managers. So it's not that I haven't learned new skills or had different experiences. Like all of that's very good. I'm not complaining about that. But in terms of like my career progression, I have actually taken a step back from being closer to manager of managers and moving up in that direction. So that's something for me that's like an interesting motivator, like how to move in that direction. But as this light's about to turn green and I get closer to being home, to kind of like bring it all back, these things change over time, right? Like I hope that by kind of walking you through some different parts of my career, which includes engineering management, right? I realize not everyone that's watching is like, that's not on, you might not ever want to do that, and you certainly should not feel forced to if it's not an interest. But like maybe it is one day, maybe it is right now for you, and you're starting out and you're like, that's what I want to do. And then you spend some time in the industry and you're like, absolutely not. I don't want to have to work with people on that level. And like, then you learn about those things. But I think it's really important to find the things that are going to drive you, because to the original question about what motivates you to be better, it's going to be a huge struggle or a ton of friction if you're trying to get better and you're not motivated to do so. And you can kind of think about this in like, if you're at a company and they have like prescribed training and you're like, why the hell am I stuck doing this? Like, I don't care about it. Like that feeling, if you have to have that the entire time that you're trying to get better, you're not going to be motivated to do it, right? Like, so you're probably going to find yourself stagnating. But if you can find those motivations, I wanted to say motivators, and I said it kind of funny, but if you can find those motivators or the right motivations for you, I think that really can help you like untap some potential. Like I said, for me, things lined up really well at Magnet Forensics. And not that I'm encouraging this, I'm just using it as an example, but because I had so many things that lined up there for me in terms of like being motivating, it meant that I could just work. Like I could work nonstop and it felt good. So I'm not suggesting you do that, but my point is that when it doesn't feel like there's friction, that's when you can kind of pour yourself into something. Obviously, do it within reason, understand your boundaries and stuff like that, but finding that motivation can make a huge difference. So if you're getting into your career, just to kind of wrap this up, and you're like, I'm here for the money, like I said, nothing wrong with that. I don't think so personally. So maybe that's how it starts, right? But I'm hopeful that if you start that way and you're like, hey, I'm here to make some money, I don't want you to go through your whole career like hating it. Because if you go on some of the previous videos, right, if you're going to be spending a majority of your life at work, so a majority of your waking life, let's say. You're going to sleep 8 hours. Let's assume we have to make some generalizations here. So 24 minus 8, what do we got left? We got 16 hours left. You have an 8-hour workday. Let's okay, there's weekends in there too, but you got 8 hours at work and 8 hours to yourself outside of work or with your family, right? So, and odds are you're probably going to have some days that are longer than 8 hours at work. So you're spending a huge chunk of your life, of your adult life, at work. If you hate it and it's just to make money, it better be so much money that the other time outside of work, those other 8 hours, are ridiculously good. And I suspect that for most people, that's not the case. So the reason I'm saying this is that in order for you to keep your sanity and have a long, happy career, I would strongly encourage you to, like, yes, if you want to make money, please, like, keep that in mind, but don't just take a job because the number on paper is higher. Try to make sure that you're balancing that out, and that way you'll be happier at work, you'll be more motivated, and you'll hopefully find those things that keep you engaged in learning. And that way you'll keep getting better. So that's my take on that. I thought it'd be an interesting one to walk through. Maybe not because of what I have to say, but hopefully as you were watching this, you got thinking about the things that motivate you. And if you haven't figured them out, spend some extra time on that. I think it'll help. So that's it for today. I'm not driving to the office, so no more videos today unless I come up with something creative later. So I'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Remember, look for Dev Leader on social media if you want to send me questions anonymously. Happy to help. And the Dev Leader live stream that I do weekly, Mondays, 7 p.m. Pacific, very much like these conversations, except it's actually live and there is a chat. I know that there's folks from Commute that are coming over and checking out the live stream. Super cool to see you there. And I hope to see more of you. So take care. Have a good weekend.